Q.9 The concept of the sovereignty of two masters. 1. Conceptual introduction. The expression sovereignty of two masters refers to a situation in which political power and authority are divided between two distinct levels of government, typically the central or national government and the regional or state governments, each of which is supreme within its own sphere. This concept is most closely associated with federalism, where sovereignty is not concentrated in one authority but constitutionally distributed. In essence, it challenges the traditional notion of absolute sovereignty, suggesting instead that political power can be shared or coordinated without either level being legally subordinate to the other. 2. Theoretical background. The classical theory of sovereignty, developed by Jean Bodin and later by Thomas Hobbes, emphasized that sovereignty is indivisible, absolute, and supreme. According to this view, only one sovereign, usually the state, can possess ultimate authority within a political system. However, the rise of federal states such as the United States and Canada necessitated a rethinking of this rigid concept. Political philosophers and constitutional jurists began to argue that sovereignty could, in practice, be divided or shared between two levels of government, both deriving their authority directly from the Constitution rather than from one another. 3. Emergence of the idea. In federalism, the phrase sovereignty of two masters thus arises from the federal principle, which recognizes dual sovereignty. In a federal constitution, power is distributed between the central government and the constituent states. Each derives its authority from the same constitutional source and functions independently within its own domain. Neither is subordinate to the other in matters assigned to it. Hence, both act as masters, sovereign within their own spheres of operation. For example, in the United States, both the federal and state governments exercise sovereignty. The federal government is supreme in national matters such as defense, foreign affairs, and interstate commerce, while the states are sovereign in matters like education, local law, and policing. Both levels draw their powers from the U.S. Constitution, not from each other, illustrating the sovereignty of two masters. 4. Meaning in the Indian context. In India, the idea of two sovereignties exists, but in a modified form. The Indian Constitution establishes a federal system with a unitary bias, meaning that while both the Union and the states have constitutional powers, ultimate sovereignty rests with the Constitution itself. The center and the states derive their authority from the same document, not from one another, and are expected to function within their respective jurisdictions defined in the 7th Schedule, Union, State, and Concurrent lists. However, India does not have complete dual sovereignty like the United States. The Union government is dominant, particularly during emergencies when powers become centralized. Thus, while both levels are masters, in normal circumstances, the center can, under special conditions, assume greater control. Demonstrating that India's sovereignty of two masters is cooperative, not absolute. 5. The constitutional basis for dual sovereignty. The dual sovereignty principle is grounded in the distribution of powers between two levels of government. In India, this is detailed in Article 245 and 246 define the subjects on which the Parliament and state legislatures can make laws. 7th Schedule divides subjects into the Union list, State list, and Concurrent list. Article 131 confers original jurisdiction on the Supreme Court to settle disputes between the Union and states, reinforcing their separate constitutional status. These provisions establish that both the Union and the states have independent spheres of authority, though ultimately bound by constitutional supremacy. 6. Comparative understanding. In a unitary system, sovereignty resides solely in the central authority and regional bodies exercise only delegated powers, example, the United Kingdom. In a federal system, sovereignty is divided, and both levels derive legitimacy from the constitution itself. The sovereignty of two masters thus differentiates federations from unitary states. However, few federations maintain perfect equality between the two sovereigns. For instance, in Canada, the provinces are relatively autonomous, but federal law prevails in case of conflict. Similarly, in India, the Union Parliament can legislate even on state matters during emergencies, indicating that sovereignty is shared but asymmetrical. 7. Challenges of dual sovereignty. The very existence of two masters can lead to conflicts of jurisdiction and authority. Overlapping powers, constitutional ambiguities, and differing political interests may cause friction between the central and regional governments. Federal disputes over taxation, resource distribution, or legislative competence exemplify this tension. Such conflicts are usually resolved through constitutional courts, which act as arbiters between the two sovereigns. 8. Philosophical and political significance. The notion of sovereignty of two masters signifies the constitutional maturity of modern governance. It recognizes that complex societies require shared power structures, balancing unity with regional autonomy. This concept ensures decentralization, prevents concentration of power, and allows local self-government within a unified political framework. In this sense, dual sovereignty is not a weakness but a design for stability and diversity in large, pluralistic nations. 9. Limitations of the concept. While theoretically attractive, absolute dual sovereignty rarely exists. In practice, federal governments retain supremacy in key areas such as defense, finance, and constitutional amendment. Moreover, in times of emergency or national crisis, the central authority often overrides state powers, demonstrating that sovereignty ultimately gravitates toward one apex authority. Therefore, the sovereignty of two masters operates within a coordinated framework rather than as two completely independent sovereignties. 10. Summary for quick understanding. The sovereignty of two masters refers to the coexistence of two levels of authority, national and regional, each supreme within its constitutional domain. It is a characteristic feature of federal systems like the United States and, in a qualified sense, India. In India, both the Union and states derive power from the Constitution, but the Union remains dominant, especially during emergencies. The concept represents a compromise between unity and autonomy, ensuring cooperative governance within a constitutional framework. 11. Quick revision notes. Sovereignty of two masters is equal to dual sovereignty in a federal system. Both center and states derive authority from the Constitution. Each is supreme within its own jurisdiction. In India is equal to cooperative federalism with unitary bias. Ultimate sovereignty is equal to Constitution, not any single authority. Ensures balance between unity and diversity. 12. One-line questions and answers for revision. 1. What does sovereignty of two masters mean? Division of power between two constitutional authorities. 2. Which form of government exhibits this feature? Federal government. 3. Who are the two masters in India? The Union and the states. 4. From where do both derive their powers? The Constitution of India. 5. Which articles define their legislative powers? Articles 245 and 246. 6. What ensures separation of powers in India? The 7th Schedule. 7. Which court resolves disputes between the two sovereigns? The Supreme Court under Article 131. 8. Is India's dual sovereignty equal? No, the center is stronger. 9. What is the theoretical basis of dual sovereignty? Federalism. 10. What is the ultimate sovereign authority in India? The Constitution itself. 13. Final connection. The concept of the sovereignty of two masters captures the essence of modern federalism, a constitutional arrangement in which power is shared, not concentrated. It reflects the understanding that governance in diverse societies requires cooperation between central and regional authorities, both functioning under the supreme will of the Constitution. In India, this principle translates into a delicate balance between autonomy and unity, ensuring that the country remains both democratically decentralized and politically integrated. Q.10 Why Marxian dialectics is known as dialectical materialism.